Let's see. So how many people do we have here right now? Is it just Morgan and Dick and who else is here?
We have 10 people.
We do.
Cindy, sorry, I didn't realize I was muted.
That's okay. Nice to see you. There's Mac and Morgan.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, guys.
Well, gosh, maybe since it's, what do you think, Cindy? Should we just go for it and get started? Okay, let's do it. So Bonnie, go ahead and thank you. So yeah, Bonnie, if you just want to go to the second slide, that'd be great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining again. I think we have several people here who joined us at our last meeting on December 9th. And gosh, we've gotten through the holidays and it's a new year. And here we are rolling with this. So thank you for taking the time to join tonight. For those who, I think there might be one or two of you who were not at the meeting on December 9th, and just for those of you who weren't, I just want everyone to know that, well, first of all, I'm Ellen Sassano. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Long Range Planner for Picken County. And Cindy Hubin is the Community Development Director for Picken County. And Bonnie Shiles is running the technical side of this meeting tonight. She is basically runs the Community Development Department. Is up and running. So thanks to them as well. And so this is the fifth meeting that we've had to get public feedback on both the Castle Creek Master Plan and the East of Aspen Master Plans. And we still anticipate having yet another one of these public input meetings a little bit later in the month. But so just to focus on this slide first, this is the web page on the Pitkin County website where all of the master plans that we are updating can be accessed. And the web page has existing conditions reports and the draft master plan updates for your reviewing pleasure. And we hope that anybody who wants to will go to that webpage and get into some detail in reviewing these plans. And Bonnie, if you want to go to the next slide, it gives a little more legible, link to that webpage. And the webpage contains all of the master plans that we're updating, but at the moment we're just focusing on, as I said, Castle Creek and the East of Aspen Independence plans. Next slide, please. So, as I said, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4 previous meetings to get your input. And here we are on January 6th. We have another meeting scheduled for January 13th, and we'll go into what we anticipate covering there. Right now, we also have a joint Planning and Zoning Commission and Board of County Commissioners meeting informal work session scheduled for January 25th to really just inform them both about our progress on these plans and the feedback we've received to date. And then that meeting, we'll know more about the details of that meeting after we complete this meeting. We'll know more about to what extent we're going to focus on these master plans at that meeting. And then on February 15th, we had tentatively scheduled the first public hearing, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to start the review process for adoption of these plans. That meeting date may change, but that's what we've tentatively scheduled. So the next slide, please, is the agenda for tonight. Really, what we're focusing on tonight is the Richmond Ridge area as it relates to both the Castle Creek and the East of Aspen Master Plan areas. And, you know, we've started the conversation a little bit about this area. There's a lot going on here. But what we hope to get from you tonight is feedback on what is working in this area from both a residential and recreational perspective, what needs to change. And then there's already been some conversation about whether there should be modifications made to the boundary between the Castle Creek and the East of Aspen Independence planning areas in the vicinity of Richmond Ridge. And as I said, we've had a little bit of conversation on that topic, and we'll get into some more on that topic a little bit later. Next slide, please. Again, for those of you who were at the last meeting, you've seen this slide before. It's just showing how the Castle Creek master plan and the East of Aspen master plan come together at the Richmond Ridge, along the Richmond Ridge. They both share that boundary and in general, and as we've discussed in previous meetings, both of these on either side of the Richmond Ridge, the west side, the Castle Creek side, and the east side or East of Aspen side, there's a lot of recreational use and shared access for that recreational use in particular. You also have both sides contain rural remote zoning and private property that sees some impacts from that recreational use, both the informal recreational use and the commercial recreational use. That really is the basis for moving forward, looking at both sides of that ridge and trying to be consistent between the plans as we try to address the issues that exist on both sides. Next slide, please. So on December 19th, we did make some decisions. We got some good recommendations from several of you who were there. One relates to the master plan boundaries at the lower reaches of Castle Creek and Maroon Creek roads. There was a question about whether or not we should separate the rural portion of Castle Creek master plan from the more urban portion of Castle Creek at the lower reaches, in the areas that are basically within the Aspen urban growth boundary and adjacent to the municipal boundary there. So the direction we got was, yes, in fact, we should look at creating a separate caucus perhaps for the lower reaches of both of those drainages, and also a separate master plan. It may be wrapped into the Aspen Area Community Plan. That's yet to be seen. There was also agreement that we should look consistently at both master plans as issues relate to the Richmond Ridge area, and that there's a need to not only refine the Castle Creek master plan boundary at the lower reaches of the valley, but also along that common boundary at Richmond Ridge. And there was a little bit of conversation in the last meeting about whether that boundary between the two planning areas should follow topography and the ridge as an example, or whether it should divide the planning areas based on which properties gain access, which side they gain access from, or whether we should just be looking at property boundaries to make sure that no boundaries are split by the planning area boundaries. So more to come on that. We'd like to talk about that some more tonight. Couple of other decisions or recommendations came out of that December 9th meeting. It was recommended that the existing conditions report for the East of Aspen Master Plan be updated to include the zoning and access changes that resulted from the approval of the Aspen Skiing Company's Aspen Mountain and Pandora's land use application. And this is something that we may want to spend more time on. It was recommended that we identify aspects of the 2000 Richmond Ridge Management Plan, which some of you may be familiar with, that are still relevant for implementation. We can talk more about that. It was recommended that we address house size, sort of an open-ended conversation that's the elephant in the room always. And then it was also suggested that we add an historically accurate section on culture and history and make recommendations to honor the past, including the Ute ancestry. That's hard to say. After the December 9th meeting, we met with a small group of people, some of you of whom were there, in person to work through that lower master plan boundary at the lower reaches of Castle Creek and Maroon Creek. And there was a recommendation made that in fact we should split off that lower area as it really relates more to the urban growth issues associated with the city of Aspen. And we're not going to show you where that recommended boundary lies tonight because it's so hard to read these things on the screen, but we will be coming up with a recommendation for that line based on that meeting, thanks to those of you who participated. And yeah, so that lower portion will be subject in theory to either a sub area plan as part of the Aspen Area Community Plan or another separate plan. Next slide, please. I think, right. So, yeah, okay. So I think we're going to go back to the agenda then. I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy. If we could go back to the agenda slide. Fine. Yeah, so Cindy, do you want to take it from here and lead us through the discussion?
Sure. Thanks, Ellen, for that overview. And I recognize that there are a couple of people who have not been to any of these meetings yet. So thank you so much for coming and getting involved. Please feel free throughout this discussion to jump in. I believe all of you have permission as panelists, and you can raise your hand and we'll recognize you. And even if you can't raise your hand on your screen, raise your hand and we'll recognize you. Try to answer any questions or discuss anything that we might not already anticipate tonight. So with that background that Ellen provided, the Richmond Hill Ridge area has quite a bit of history. And back in, was it 2003, Ellen, when we worked with the community a lot with the Forest Service and other entities. It was a very involved process where we created the Richmond Ridge Management Plan. And some of you will remember that plan. And it has mostly to do with travel management that the Forest Service then incorporated into their Forest Service travel management plan. It talks about recreation, it talks about conflicts in recreation and conflicts even back then with some of the snowmobile parking and issues such as that. It talked about the build out, well, it talked about residential relative to the rural and remote zoning in that area and gave a lot of recommendations. And there, I think that along with the 2015 set of recommendations that we got out of our outreach on recreation for the area, there's a lot of good information, and we've already received a lot of data or review of the 2015 data from Joe and others especially in the Castle Creek area, that we appreciate. And with that, I think we need to do a deeper dive into the Richmond Ridge Management Plan and see if, in fact, some of these questions can be answered. Like, what is working? What has changed? What are the changed circumstances up there since the Richmond Ridge Management Plan went into effect? And we've heard a lot about that in terms of the level of intensity. We've heard a lot about the different types of recreational vehicles that are present today that weren't back in 2003. So what needs to change? And what can we do in this master plan to address those changes through action items? So with that prelude, I think we're going to probably need to do a deeper dive and have everybody really focus and read through that management plan again. And Ellen and I were thinking that maybe the 13th, which is next week, might be a good time to have that discussion on the management plan itself. And it might bring up a lot of questions for us, as well as some hopeful solutions or action items moving forward. But with that being said, I think that one of the main topics tonight is whether or not the boundaries of the current East of Aspen Master Plan and the Richmond Ridge Plan are working in order to have an effective planning area. Right now, the boundary tries to generally follow the ridge. And so much of the area on the east side of Aspen, east of Aspen Master Plan, is in that drainage, but it's not accessed from that point, and therefore kind of relates to Castle Creek in a much different way than it relates to the east of Aspen side. So we wanted to have that discussion with everyone. Glenn Horn, who I don't think is able to join us tonight. I'm looking to see who's on here. I don't think he was going to be able to.
He was not going to be.
He sent in earlier today a proposal to follow certain lines that are almost impossible to determine, by the little map that was sent. I don't think it's worth us trying to bring it up on the screen, but it was generally proposing that the Castle Creek side pick up much of the upper part of the east of Aspen side of the drainage. Basically, things that are south of Lusheen Road and an old historic road that leads out and extends to the east from Lusheen's Road out in that direction. And he named a few gullies that I would really have to look at a map because I'm not familiar with their names. And so the idea is if the area is accessed and somewhat used by through the Castle Creek side, that land area would then be located within the Castle Creek Master Plan side. And there were a couple other discussions about that. We had a larger discussion about if something's in your drainage and you look at it, you might want it to be in your plan. So if there's anyone here from the east of Aspen side, you may want to have that discussion with us tonight. But really, that's kind of where we are on the agenda for tonight. And we wanted to just hear from everyone your thoughts, in addition to the thoughts that Ellen went over last time with what we got from our December 9th meeting. So with that, do people just generally have some questions that we might want to address? Unfortunately, with this with this agenda on the screen, I am not seeing everybody. So if you have your hand raised, I cannot see you.
Well, do you want to keep the agenda up or should we?
Let's go ahead and take it down. Let's go ahead and take it down for now. And if we need to refer back to it, we can. I see a few other people have joined us. So that's great. And I don't know who the 1191 number is, but maybe we should go from there. Would anybody, I think I know many people on the screen, but I don't know everyone. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us what your interests are, that would be great. And since it's still a relatively small group, I might just go ahead and call on you. Ellen Sassano, Cindy Hubin, Monisha from the Community Development Office, and Joe Wells, you might, I'll just go through how my screen sees everyone and just give a brief.
Hey, Cindy, it's Jeff Miller. I'm just kind of curious if, as part of this, are you going to be discussing, any changes in the North Star Preserve as it relates to the parking or paddle boarding or anything else? Because that's one of the kind of the main topical points that our caucus, constantly complains to me about.
Yeah. Well, Ellen, I know we've gotten several comments on that, and we've recently gotten internal comments from Open Space and Trails that I have not read through. But Ellen, do we have anything that's going to amend those areas of the North Star Preserve?
Yes, Jeffrey, I think those comments have been received loud and clear, and we have made reference in the draft. We will have and will continue to make reference in the updated draft to the need to address the heavy recreational use and impacts on the neighborhood from a parking and traffic perspective primarily. I think those were the biggest concerns. But yes, we have heard, and we do have some updates included in the current draft.
Yeah, because Ellen, I received some correspondence. I don't know if it was a parallel effort, but it looked like all the plans are largely done as it relates to the permanent parking at the mile marker 43, as well as the beach and kind of further up towards Wildwood. So it looked like it was CDOT approved, everybody approved. So I just didn't know if that was the case or not the case. Because I've gotten a ridiculous amount of complaints about the number of parking spots and kind of takeout means that looks like it's going in this summer.
And so we can take this off too, but it's important. I know it's really a significant issue for your neighborhood. Do you know who you received that information from?
I tell you what I'll do is while we're on the phone, I'll just go through my folder and I'll shoot it to you and Cindy.
That would be great. Yeah, we know it's an issue, and we want to make sure that we clearly address it in terms of a recommendation for moving forward on those issues because they're significant.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and Jeff, I think that Open Space and Trails obviously has been leading that portion of the discussion with North Star and their management plan. So we'll try to make a better effort and coordinate with you on that.
Yeah, because one of the issues, I'll just kind of air it while I have a forum here is.
Sure, yes, please.
There was kind of a half-baked effort to put kind of some no parking signs, particularly around mile marker 43, the takeout point. And the residents, the homeowners that live there, the Dons were instrumental in kind of getting CDOT to put that in. And so there are tons of no parking signs from their place all the way up to our place. And it's just people illegally park like all day long. And Open Trail says, look, that's not our issue. That's the sheriff's issue. So we've, pestered the sheriff also about, well, give a damn ticket then and don't make it some bullshit nominal ticket. Make it sting if you're gonna, and so nothing has happened. So I think it would be helpful if those three constituencies kind of work together more. Because it's pretty easy to, and I see Joe's snicker there, but I realize there are three independent agencies, but it's kind of a complete waste of time with all you're doing is like, oh, it's not him, it's the sheriff's fault, or it's the open spaces fault. It's like that's not a solution. That's just bitching about a problem.
Well, yes, well said. Thank you. And we've heard that. And Joe is chuckling because Castle Creek Road has some similar issues. So, yeah, good recommendation and something.
But Ellen and Cindy, I'll find that email. I just received it this last week, so I'll find it while we're on the phone here and forward it to you. And I don't know if it's somebody getting out ahead of their skis, no pun intended, on something that was approved, or it's just planning. But it looked pretty definitive.
Okay.
So I'll find that while we're on the phone. So anyway, sorry to digress.
Okay, Jeffrey, are you going to be able to hang in here with us for a little bit to discuss the boundaries of the planning areas?
I may not be able to stay the whole time. The boundary, the defining boundary areas, tell me if I'm thinking about this wrong, is that's really at the Richmond Ridge level going down to the preserve and then over to Castle Creek, correct?
Right. Do you feel that since you can't be on here the full time, do you have any thoughts about where that boundary is? If the boundary were to dip further over into the Roaring Fork drainage, but be picked up by the Castle Creek caucus versus the east of Aspen. Do you have any feelings on that?
No, I just don't know what the implications are. If you slide it east or west, does that mean it's a different tax base and homeowners have to pay more taxes? I just don't know. You move it over 50 yards. Who gives a hoot? It's still the Richmond Ridge, right? And people are going to use it.
I think the idea is that, like in recent discussions, even like Pandora, a lot of the people felt that most of the implications were on the Castle Creek side versus the
Pandora. Yeah, I would disagree with that. Because our home looks right at Walsh's, and that's right where the extension is going to be made, and I kind of uses my duty to kind of disseminate information to the 30-some homes that are in the caucus, and as well as kind of hosting a kind of a town hall meeting that Kaplan and some of his guys did this summer, and really you can't even see it. It's kind of behind the ridge, the front ridge. Where is kind of the valley that goes into. But in terms of who it impacted more, I would argue where, the run is extended in the East Aspen caucus. It's not in the Castle Creek side, other than some of the zoning points that came up that I kind of read about in the paper in terms of, how many acres per house up top.
Well, that's exactly this discussion is, where should that boundary be based on, the impacts? And
right.
A lot of it's, there are visual and there are access issues. So I think it's classic ridge issues. So I'm not sure we're going to solve anything here tonight, but it's good to have your input on that. It sounds like you guys are concerned about keeping that in your area from a visual impacts perspective.
Yeah, but I think that's already passed, right? So that's going forward, and I can tell you, I think the opinions of the neighborhood were pretty varied. You can ask yourself, are some people skiers or not, and what kind of recreation people like to do, but there are pretty outspoken parties on both sides, but now that's going forward.
But Jeffrey, I think that the thing that we're trying to say here is that it's not just about Pandora's, it's about that whole ridge.
Oh, okay, yeah, valid point.
I'm sorry, I just used that as an example.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's
And
meant
I'll add one other thing. I see we have two hands up. Jeffrey, just specifically in response to one of your questions, there are no taxing implications associated with those master planning area boundaries. So
Okay.
clear that up. But Cindy, I see that Marcella and Mac both have their hands up. Were you gonna, am I interrupting you or shall we go right to them? You're muted, Cindy. You're muted.
It's time for discussion and we'll forget all the introductions.
Great.
At this point. Thank you. If you want me to, I'll just continue on. Marcella, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, just quickly, obviously we're the significant ridge owner. So Larson family across the ridge. And I think from our perspective, we're a little concerned about the various caucus engagement on the ridge and whether or not it's going to be possible to get a plan actually adopted soon from either side. So, I definitely think that, the east of Aspen area is hugely impacted by obviously the Pandora expansion and also what's going to, be implicated in terms of back skiing or like, just use back there because everything is going to be pushed out. Also, Little Annie will be impacted. So, I hear that, and I certainly understand why Glenn Horn has proposed what he has proposed. I'd like to see it. But without like an actual commitment to get a plan passed soon, I don't, for us, that's not really a great alternative, like going this way or that way. So I'd rather see some just agreement about what people want to happen on the ridge. Okay. So also from the Board of County Commissioners, because obviously they just approved a major upzoning. And so what do they want? That's a question for us.
Could I hop in there and just try to preface? That's why we're asking you guys what it is you want so that we can go back to the Board of County Commissioners and say, this is, these are the preferences of the public. So what I'm going to try to do tonight is push you guys on a couple things and ask you, Marcella, in that what you just discussed, are you saying that you hope we just move on and get a master plan approved, adopted, and not worry about changing the boundaries at this point?
I don't know that I really care about the boundaries, as long as you actually have a master plan in place that is actually going to be implemented. So if you adopt a master plan that's not implemented, I care a lot about that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, but I still think what you're saying is that that the boundaries don't really matter, but both master plans being adopted relatively soon is really the goal. Along
with implementation, because implementation is the key. So adopting a master plan doesn't matter if you don't implement it.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Right. Is there anything else you want to say right now? Or
no, I'll lower my hand.
Okay, thanks. Mac, you are next.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Just some of the points about the boundaries specific with regards to the neighborhood planning area east of Aspen Caucus / Castle Creek. I know I've said this in the past and we'll just continue to say it, that from a visual standpoint, from a accessing the mountain standpoint, with specific to the operational boundary for Aspen Mountain, which now includes the expansion into Pandora's. We would consider ourselves in the Aspen Mountain neighborhood planning area, which is associated with the east of Aspen caucus, or has historically been. From whether you're talking hikers who access, whether you're talking vehicles that are driven by employees, whether you're talking about people taking a lift, 99 point whatever percent of the access to the hill is from the city of Aspen, frankly, and the front side road or the lifts on the front side. So if you look at all of those, I think that the boundaries, just because of frankly, when the caucus boundaries were first created, I think that they were probably created with using a paper map and a thicker marker, if you will. And should we look at the details of what technology allows us to, and to fine tune certain points, I think that would be a worthy exercise. But basically, our standpoint is that we'd like to keep things as is within the operational boundary for the mountain. And we're very excited, to Marcella's point, I think there should be a plan up top. And, Cindy and Ellen, you're both alluding, hey, we all need to do our homework before the next meeting, and read up on the 99 Richmond Hill Management Plan. And that's literally, it's already on my desk. And I think it's a great suggestion. I think it's going to be a slog to get through, frankly, because I know how difficult it was in the first place, but it'll be worth it. So we're looking forward to those conversations. And just from a, not talking about a new caucus or anything like that, but the current neighborhood planning area for Aspen Mountain is also, it's called the Aspen Mountain Richmond Hill Neighborhood Planning Area. And if we are going to, Aspen Mountain has its own master plan. And if we are going to be going through this process with Richmond Hill, it may make sense to break the neighborhood planning area on however the group deems to divide. And, of course, I would propose the operational boundary, the zoning boundary, however you want to call it, one of those suggestions on a split like that, because in principle they are separate management areas. The ski area is managed different than Richmond Hill will be proposed to be managed, and it may make sense to have a separate planning area associated with it, considering there's the differences. So just throwing that thought out there, and I will put my hand down. Thank you.
Thanks, Mac. I see Chris Kiley's here. I don't know if he wants to say anything also on behalf of the ski company, but welcome, Chris. I know we're throwing you into the fire. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, only have something to say in terms of it is phenomenally excited to be back in the Valley after 10 years of being gone. I'm back with the Aspen Skiing Company in the planning department, and enormously excited to be working alongside Mac with all of these community issues, as well as all of our other projects on the ski company slate. I have a ton to learn, so I'm trying to listen and process and remember back to all the projects I worked on, including that initial Richmond Hill plan, and we'll get up to speed and contribute as quick as I can. But Mac is certainly stewarding the conversation on our behalf really well.
Right. Well, good to see you. And all right. So Elizabeth, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Cindy, I had just mentioned at the last meeting that I would hope that you include the elk migratory routes as part of the boundary making decisions, because they are a primary user of the North Star Nature Preserve, and they do access off the ridge back and forth. And so I don't know, it didn't seem like they were taken too much into account with the Pandora decision.
Thank you. We have that written down. We are going to hopefully have a chance to talk with Tom Cardamone about his latest study, which is the linkage of a lot of the migratory routes, and see what we can incorporate in the plan. So we haven't forgotten you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
And then I know Joe Wells had his hand up, and so you want to jump
Well,
in?
I just want to point out, I'm back on the previous set of maps that Tyler generated for our prior meeting. It's a little confusing because it appears to suggest that the east of Aspen caucus borders our boundary, and of course that's not the case. We have all these large parcels within a planning area, but they aren't necessarily within the east of Aspen caucus. So there's quite a bit of separation right now between the Castle Creek caucus boundary and the east of Aspen boundary. We know as a result of looking into this when Pandora's was being reviewed, that the Castle Creek caucus boundary is well below the ridge line on Aspen Mountain, such that we know we want to fix that. I had always operated under the notion that the boundary would be along the ridge line. And then Glenn made some very good points, I thought, at one of the prior meetings, that we're the ones being affected by a lot of this recreation that's occurring using Little Annie Road and Midnight Mine Road. And he argued that that we would be better served if those areas were within the Castle Creek caucus. I think a point that Jeff made was most of the east of Aspen impacts from Pandora's is visual, and that has now been approved. So the impacts that are going to continue after Pandora's is developed will for the most part impact on us in the Castle Creek Valley. So just wanted to bring those points up. I sent out an email to Tyler asking if any of those features that Glenn had raised this afternoon were in his data bank, and Tyler hasn't responded. So I don't know if he's in town or out of town. But in any case, I just wanted to clarify some things about the boundary. We need to move the boundary at least up to the ridge line if we're not going to move it further. So.
Thanks, Joe. I know we have some other hands up here, but we'll work on getting a clean map that shows the recommendation that Glenn is making and where it falls relative to roads and properties, so that you can see. I know that I can see that Randy has his hand up. I think Marcella had her hand up. Did you? But it looks like it's not up anymore. Marcella, have you backed off there? All right, why don't we move to Randy next? Thanks, Joe.
Hi, everyone. I guess I wanted to maybe expand a little bit on Joe's comments. I did talk with Glenn today about his idea for establishing I guess it would really be sort of the north boundary of the Castle Creek caucus area, and basically Lucien's Road running east out for quite a ways, and then up to Upper Hurricane, and including sort of both sides of Upper Hurricane and down into Little Annie. That seemed to make sense to me. And while I appreciate what Mac was saying about a large percentage of users accessing Aspen Mountain from the front, and that currently they're in the East Aspen and Aspen Mountain planning area. There's no question that Castle Creek Road and Little Annie Road still accommodate a variety of users, whether it's contractors, subcontractors, and our road is instrumental and critical to the ski company's ongoing maintenance and projects and use of the ski area. So it seems to me that having at least the upper part of Aspen Mountain, the sun deck, and the upper terminals, and maybe down to where Glenn has suggested as part of our planning area, makes a lot of sense to me. And I know it's not really what Ski Co would prefer, because they'd rather just be, as Mac has expressed, in one planning area. But to me, if it's only going to be one planning area, then it probably should be ours. So those are my, that's my 2 cents worth.
And if I may, thank you, Randy. It sounds as though, yeah, we're going to have to get a better understanding of what makes sense for that, where that boundary line lies. But it sounds as though what people are talking about are the issues associated with the use in the Richmond Ridge area, and that includes access and recreational uses both. And so it begs the question as Marcella said, I think, regardless of where the boundary line lies, we need to understand what the issues are, and they need to probably be addressed in both planning areas on either side of the ridge consistently. We just want to make sure that the issues are acknowledged and addressed, and recommendations made for implementation, regardless of where the boundary lies. We still need to come up with a boundary that makes sense. But, you know, when push comes to shove, it's about understanding what the issues are. And we've heard a lot, you know, we've gotten some good feedback so far with respect to those issues, but I guess to the extent that we can get more of those issues articulated tonight, if they haven't already been raised, that would be super helpful. And I'll stop talking there. Elizabeth, your hand is still up. I don't know if you had more to add. Or not. You are muted if you are.
Oh, sorry, Ellen. No, the main thing was just, even though the North Star Nature Preserve has its Smith property original boundaries, I just wanted to take the whole hillside into consideration. That's all. And so I will lower my hand. There you go.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Ellen?
Yeah, Morgan, go for it.
No, it's Marcella.
Oh, Marcella, I see Morgan's hand up too. Marcella,
Okay.
Jump in, then we'll follow with Morgan and Mac.
I apologize. I think I failed to raise my hand. I tried. So, you know, in terms of the boundary, you know, hearing Randy Gold's comments and, you know, the Castle Creek issues, you know, I get it. Makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me is what's going to be carved out and how it's going to be managed, right? So, for example, what ski company is proposing to be carved out, like their master plan area isn't part of, you know, any sort of master plan in the county is not appropriate. So, you know, for example, the entire, like, basically the ridge should be included in whatever master plan it is. They shouldn't be carved out because this is a theme for them. Like, we've already master planned the area, so therefore we're not subject to any master plans. So I think it's really, really important to include them in, the entire master planning area, whichever side it ends up on, right? Okay. And, again, I don't really have an opinion about this other than, get something passed, get it implemented.
Right. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Morgan and then Mac.
Great. Hi, I'm Morgan. I run the Braun Hut, and I think our biggest concern in the summer is the motorized use on the Little Annie and Express Creek and Richmond Ridge roads, which we've all been to a number of meetings about. And I think that it would be good to have those roads, and especially the parking that supports that recreation, included in at least the same planning conversation, because it's the increased impact on those roads is something that's very difficult to control. And even though there are new regulations about having licensed vehicles, et cetera, all the Razor OHV conversation, it's not all that often that it's enforced. And so that's just the summer side of that conversation. And then in the winter side, I think it's a little bit more of a Forest Service conversation, but with the snowmobile use, my observation with that is that the more complicated the allowed areas are, the worse the worse it is for people following the rules. So basically, we have tons and tons of issues of snowmobiles in wilderness off of the Richmond Ridge road. And that's all part of that Richmond Ridge planning. And the Barnard Hut just sort of exists with a teeny tiny postage stamp of a hut boundary, and experiences a lot of motorized use around it. And in that Richmond Ridge travel management from 2003, I believe, that whole area, there were sort of a lot of sacrifices made to the motorized recreation there, and a lot of the snowmobiles that come off of Ski-Co, off of the marina up there. And one thought just for the broader conversation of the Castle Creek planning is to just totally eliminate snowmobile access past the up past the King Cabin, just because it's a area that's not as popular, and it creates tremendous conflict with the Ashcroft ski touring and the hut users, and it's a very constrained valley where there isn't all that much terrain for those users to use. So those are just my two comments on summer motorized use and winter motorized use. So thank you.
Great comments. Thanks, Morgan. And yeah, it sounds as though we will get more into those. Some of those are Forest Service roads and travel management issues. So we definitely will delve more into that when we get into go back to the Richmond Ridge Management Plan. But those issues affect the Castle Creek Plan as well. So thanks. And Mac, did you want to follow up?
Yeah, thank you. Just kind of two quick points. I'm hearing, obviously what Randy and Joe are saying about just access over and how important that is to them. And, even if the ski area remains in the neighborhood planning area, which is associated with the east of Aspen, I mean, we not only, we definitely value our relationship with the Castle Creek Caucus, and every project that we do, we've ever since I've been in the department, we've had meetings ahead of time, and in addition to all of our CMPs and communication plans and traffic plans, et cetera, are all referenced by the county as before we're able to do anything. And I think that communication is, I hope, is led to a positive feeling between the two of us, because I know I appreciate the communication that I get from you guys. So I think there are definitely, you don't have to be in the same caucus in order to communicate and be respectful neighbors, is all I'm trying to say there. And then second, we're not trying to carve out of the system. I heard that Marcella say that, like, we're where the county has put us, and we're not asking to be removed from that. We're happy to play in the sandbox with everybody here. Yes, we have an approved master plan for the ski rec zone district, which we are in. And yes, we also are included in the East of Aspen caucus master plan in many sections for Aspen Mountain, and frankly, Highlands is included in the Maroon Creek and the Castle Creek, et cetera. So like, this is something where we're glad participants in, and appreciate the community input, and are trying to keep things simple, as we've stated. I know I just heard that from Morgan. He's looking for the people that follow the rules to be able to actually understand the rules. Now, that's something that I share that sentiment. So that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Matt. There's, I don't see any hands up. I'm sorry if I'm missing one, but there's several people on the meeting who haven't had a chance to weigh in yet. I'm not going to pick on anybody, but are there any of you out there who would like to weigh in? I know that we have received several great comments from Courtney, who I see is on the meeting, and I don't know that we need to share all the details about her recommendations, but she has suggested that we include a section in the plan that is very specific to the cultural and historical aspects of the Richmond Ridge area in particular, because there's a lot of history there, and she suggested that we should pay a little bit more attention to the ancestry, the history and culture in that area. And I think that's a great idea. She's also contributed some interesting reading on is it sorry, Cindy, is it net zero? The concept of net zero, and Cindy's muted. But so thank you, Courtney, for the input we've gotten so far, and we will absolutely incorporate the good recommendations that you've made in our draft.
Yeah, I think that something that Courtney's email recently in December brings up is that, are we being the most energy efficient by not allowing extensions of utilities in the rural and remote, or some type of maybe solar array that would serve more people within the rural and remote. And so it's that whole debate about energy efficiency and all of that. So really important discussions that have a lot of implications on the rural and remote zone district that would have to be discussed in a lot more detail.
And that leads me to ask you all whether, so we focused a lot on the boundary. It's clearly an interesting issue to tackle. But speaking of the rural remote zone district in the Richmond Ridge area, Are there any thoughts about, we've gotten some good input on changes that may make sense in the rural remote zone district as it relates to the Richmond Ridge area, but I don't know if there are any thoughts out there about anything specific to the character that is associated with that district and how it may or may not be impacted by uses. You know, are there any things that need to change to make sure that the rural remote zone district character and intent remains intact as it relates to uses in the Richmond Ridge area? Just throwing it out there. It's a tough one. And maybe it's just that we're past dinner time and people are starting to lose steam. Are there any other thoughts out there? Anything that people would like to comment on? Again, we're trying to understand what's working in the Richmond Ridge area in terms of uses, access, character issues, and recreation as one focal point, but not the only focal point. And things that aren't working. We've heard from a lot of you, but this is an opportunity to throw anything else out there. If you feel as though you haven't yet had an opportunity to weigh in.
Hi, Ella. It's Marcella.
Hey, Marcella.
So we've talked about this before. I think the zoning district rural and remote needs to be rewritten. I think you have some excellent proposals in that regard. You know, substandard parcels in particular are a big deal. What's really welcome in the marketplace and a positive for that area is the TDR market. So I understand that's exploding, which will, you know, maybe for the short term help those smaller parcels actually realize some value so they don't have to develop. But meanwhile, you know, the actual zoning regulations for those parcels are really not good. So, you know, I know you're looking at that, so I appreciate it.
Thanks, Marcella. Yeah, you've given us some great specific recommendations on that topic, which we will take forward as recommendations. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Joe, you have your hand raised. Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, I had previously written a letter opposing STRs. My own opinion about STRs is these zones in the Castle Creek area are single family zones. They're not lodge zones. As you move away from the urban core, I feel more strongly about limiting STRs. I'm a little nervous that we've coined an acronym for short-term rentals. It suggests that it's an embedded part of our land use now. But I'm strongly opposed to short-term rental use in the rural and remote zones. So hopefully that'll be addressed soon.
Joe, if I could hop in there for everybody's knowledge, the Board of County Commissioners is going to be looking at a short-term rental ordinance on January 26th. And as part of that ordinance, one of the provisions would be that there would be no short-term rentals allowed in the rural and remote zone district. So, and I really encourage anyone who's interested in short-term rentals to please participate in that public hearing on January 26th. And it's a public hearing. The board will take comments. So please come and speak your piece on that and specifically how how it is addressed with the rural and remote zone district. So thanks. The other thing, if no one else has anything else they want to jump on, the one thing that I'd like to do, Joe, is address another email that you sent us, which is the timing of the master plan and the timing of the master plan and how you felt like maybe more people want to get involved and want to, that we should slow it down a little and take a little more time rather than stick to the schedule that we showed you earlier tonight, which was on the 25th of January, going to the Board of County Commissioners and the P&Z jointly to discuss where we are with the master plan. And then I think it's February, early February 5th, maybe going February
15th. Yeah.
Going to the P&Z with a first review of both master plans, the east of Aspen and Castle Creek. I think in response to that request, which is not unreasonable because there's a lot to be covered, I would ask, however, what other topic items would you think that we need to cover that we have not covered in order to move forward? Because we do want to adopt these master plans as quickly as possible, because the Board of County Commissioners has said that in 2022, they want to get back to discussing as a whole growth management with the community. And in order to do that, I think they really do need to be informed by master plans. So I would request that people speak up about anything specific that we haven't covered that you'd like to cover, either in more depth or that we haven't yet talked about in the east of Aspen or the Castle Creek side.
Well, let me just chime in. It was my hope that once we decide where the boundary is, that we could then do a new mailing to all the property owners within that boundary, because many are not being noticed presently, and that those people would have an opportunity to engage in this process if they choose to. So my primary interest was in getting more involvement from whatever we decide the caucus boundary should be. We've dropped out some significant areas at our last meeting, and I feel like my email list has dwindled because we haven't done a notice by snail mail in a while. So people have moved out of the caucus. They've asked to be removed from the mailing list, the email list, and they haven't necessarily been replaced by the purchasers of those units because they perhaps are unaware that the caucus even exists. So from my perspective, I'd like to set the boundary. I'd like to do a mailing. I'd like to encourage people to submit their email addresses and get involved in the process. So that's my primary interest.
That makes sense, Joe. Just so everyone does know, we did send out another snail mail to the Castle Creek caucus, but it was based on a list that Ellen, I think we developed back in September, or maybe a little earlier, maybe August. And what Joe's saying is there's been a lot of changeover as far as ownership goes in that on the Castle Creek side, and probably on both sides as far as ownership goes. So the idea would be to be more informative and get a new assessor's mailing list and send out another snail mail to the caucus areas. So thanks.
I think your mailing went out to the owners within the original caucus boundary,
Yes,
which is
larger, right?
not really what we're talking about right now. You know, it's larger to the extent that it goes all the way around to the base of Highlands, but it's smaller because it doesn't go at least to the ridgeline. So.
I think it does go to the ridge line. But we'll talk about that more. I get your point, and thank you. Mac, do you have your hand up again?
I do. I just wanted to make sure, has any, we've got new comments in the past on the master plans, and I'm just wondering if any updated version of those exists for us to do another read through, basically.
I have received some that have not been posted yet, so I need to work with Bonnie and get everything that we've received, even in the last couple of days, up on the webpage. If that's is that your question?
Yes and no. That I'll take a look at the webpage. My question was, is there a new redlined version since the last one we reviewed, basically? Okay.
The answer is no, not yet.
Yeah. Am I up to speed on my homework?
Yes, but you've got more homework for next week. Everybody, we're hoping that everybody will want to dive into that Richmond Ridge management plan for us next week and talk a little bit more in depth about those uses. That's everything I had.
The only other question I have is how we follow up on the boundary discussion and when. Now, if we're putting off, if we do decide to take a little bit more time, we can schedule. I think we've just talked about scheduling a January 13th meeting to talk about the 2000 Richmond Ridge Management Plan and, you know, how relevant it is, what needs to be implemented still from that plan. But we haven't really talked about how and when we work a little bit more on the boundary, on the Richmond Ridge boundary location, if that's something we want to do. So Cindy, do you have any thoughts about?
Yeah, I'm thinking that might fall out as part of the discussion when we get into more detail with the Richmond Ridge Management Plan. It might become a little more clear if people want to make any changes or not. And I think we just got Glenn's proposal today, and I'd like to get that out on a better map for people to take a look at. One thing we could do is we could put all of the alternatives, maybe a couple alternatives for boundary changes into or put them on maps and call them alternative 1, 2, 3, whatever, and then post those and ask people to make comments. How about that?
I think that makes sense. Yeah, some thumbs up there. Thank you. Okay, so
I think Randy might have raised his hand during that. I'm not sure.
Randy, did you raise your hand? I don't see it up at the moment.
Mistake. That was a mistake.
That's a good thing you're not at an auction, right? So you haven't purchased anything unintentionally, which is a good thing. But so
Exactly.
You just bought a Picasso.
except for that, yeah. So all right, well, I'll let Cindy do the closing here. So unless people have other comments, it sounds like we will reconvene. It's a week on January 13th, which is a week from tonight, same time, same format. And the focus will be the Richmond Ridge Management Plan from 2000 and to what extent it's still relevant and or needs to be implemented still or be modified. I don't know that modification is an option, but and to what extent maybe we just incorporate that plan into the Castle Creek plan. So Cindy, did you want to, that will be our next meeting. And so
So my understanding is, oh, I'm sorry, Al. Thank you. My understanding is the Richmond Hill Ridge Management Plan is on our website. So you can access it there. If not, Ellen, let's get it up there ASAP because it's a lot of reading for next week. But there are some good summaries you can look at. So please take a look and come to that meeting prepared to have some discussion, if you will. We will get out some maps for potential alternatives that can be modified as far as boundaries between the east of Aspen area and the Castle Creek planning area. And we will get all of the comments that we've gotten more recently posted on the website for you. And I wanted to just thank those of you who are attending tonight who have not attended in the past. And I hope you'll feel comfortable either giving us a call if you didn't feel comfortable speaking tonight, if it's all a little overwhelming and confusing, and or if you have just comments you'd like to make, please feel free to contact Ellen or myself, and then we'll go from there. And please come back.
And I'll just add that I think hopefully by next Thursday, we'll have a better feel and trajectory for the public meetings, the work sessions, and subsequent public meetings and hearings for adoption in terms of dates. I know it sounds as though we may push those back a bit, and we'll keep you informed. Hopefully by next Thursday, we'll have an idea of a little bit more of an idea of what that schedule will look like. And that's all I have.
Thank you all for your participation. Really appreciate it.
Everybody, thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. You're welcome. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen and Cindy.
Enjoy. You're welcome.
Bye.
Night.
Thank you.